Welcome to your first video from Mrs. Zarn of Chapter 10. We're going to do areas of circles today. So some of you may have seen this formula before, so we're going to review the formula and then we're going to get into some irregular figures. First of all, let's review what the formula is. Area is pi times the radius squared, or some people like to say pi r squared. Now remember, we did circumference the last chapter, which is all the way around the circle, and that's a different formula, pi times diameter. Now we're dealing with pi times the radius squared. I like to remember that radius squared means area because area is units squared. So let's apply this formula right here. So first of all, the directions say, find the area of each circle, give the exact answer, which means with pi, and an approximate answer to the nearest square unit. So first of all, let's write our formula up here. Area equals pi r squared. And now let's take our first picture. So we need to identify what the radius is, first of all. So we know that the diameter is 8, so that means the radius has to be 4 inches, half of the diameter. Now if we were to use our formula, area equals pi times the radius squared. Since the radius is 4, 4 times 4 is 16. So we can write that as pi times 16, or another way to say it is 16 pi. This would be the exact answer right here, because when we use the symbol pi, it's as close as we can get, because pi is an infinite number. Now, if we were to approximate the answer to the nearest square unit, we would have to put that into our calculator and use the pi button. So I put it into my calculator, and using the pi button or a 3.14 estimation, I got 50 inches squared. Now remember, it says to the nearest square unit, so we want to make sure to do what the directions say, so about 50 inches squared. Let's take a look at the next one. Now on the next one, we're given the radius, so we don't have to do anything. Area is pi r squared, so area equals pi. The radius is 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Better yet, write it as 36 pi. That is our exact. Our approximation, if we use the pi button on our calculator, ends up giving us 36 times the pi button, which is 113, about the nearest square unit, meters squared. Finally, our last circle, again, we're given the diameter. So let's make sure that we find the radius first. Radius is 2 1/10. And we're going to use our formula, area equals pi, and we have to do 2 1/10 squared. Now to find our exact, we would have to do 2 1/10 times 2 1/10. And then to find our approximate, we would have to use the pi button on our calculator. So it turns out that this right here would be 4 41/100ths times pi. And then our approximate answer would be about 14 feet squared. Now here is our first irregular figure. We want to find the total area of this figure to the nearest square unit again. So let's look at what shapes we have. We see first of all that we have a rectangle. That's this shape right here. The second shape we have is a semicircle. Semicircle means half, so we're going to have to use our circle formula and divide our answer by 2. So let's start first with the rectangle. We have 14 times 10, which is 140. And then we're going to do our semicircle. Pi times the radius squared. Now let's figure out what the radius is. This all right here is the diameter. So since this is parallel to our 10 inches, we know this diameter is also 10 inches. But let's figure out what that radius is. Remember, it's half, so half of 10 would be 5. So we're going to do pi times 5 squared. We could actually put that right into our calculator, or you can do pi times 25. Pi times 25 is about 78 and 5/10. When we add these two together, 140 plus 78 and 5/10 equals 218. Actually, if we round it, it would round to about 219 inches squared. Again, we're following the directions. It says to the nearest square unit. That means no decimals. If that was a little bit confusing for you, make sure that you rewind and watch this example again, because it's something that you haven't seen before. Right here we have another irregular shape. It says to find the area now of the shaded region. So that means we don't want the white. You can almost imagine that some dough was laid out for a cookie, and you took a giant cookie cutter, cut out the middle part right here, and you want to find out what's left. So we have a big circle and we have a small circle on the inside of it. And essentially we need to do the big minus the small to find the blue. So let's start with finding the area of the big circle. So the big circle, we'll do in red, it's going to be pi times the radius squared. As we can see, this is the radius of the big circle. So pi times 10 squared. Now 10 squared is 100. So we can eventually go to pi times 100. Now let's go to the small circle before we actually simplify it. The small circle right here, we need to find out what this radius is right there. Now we know this part here is 4 inches, and this whole part is 10 inches, so we can actually do 10 minus 4 to find out what that smaller green area is. So we actually have pi, 10 minus 4 is 6, 6 squared, and that's still going to give us the blue. So let's go ahead and actually calculate all of that out. So this approximates to 314, and this approximately is 113 and 4/100, which that would be 296/100. Now I did that with a 3.14 estimation. Now we said to round to the nearest square unit, so this would round up to about 201, not centimeters, we're going to be in inches actually, inches squared. So remember, what we did is we did the big circle minus the small circle to get what was left over, the blue shaded. So we did pi times radius squared, pi times radius squared. Now we got the 6 from subtracting 10 minus 4. We approximated both answers and found a solution. Now you could just plug all of this in this box right into your calculator as well, and you would also get a similar answer. You could be off by a few tenths, but it would be very, very close to what we got here. Our final problem right here says 1 pound of grass seed covers approximately 675 feet squared. Find the area of the lawn below. Then once we find that area, it says find the amount of grass seed you need to buy to cover the lawn. So let's again write down the shapes that we see. You have a rectangle and a semicircle, like we did before. So let's start with the rectangle. So that's going to be 45 times 25. And 45 times 25 is 1,125. Now to continue with the semicircle, we we know that we need to use this radius right here. If the whole thing is 30, half of it is 15. Pi times 15 squared. So if we do pi times 15 squared, we get 706 and 5/10. Now we know we need to divide that in half because we need a semicircle. So we'll take that number and divide it by 2. When we do that, we get 353 and 25 thousandths. Now we need to find the total. So the total would be 1,125 plus 353 and 25 hundredths. When we add that together, we get 1,478 and 25 hundredths feet squared. That's our total area. Now we need to find the amount of grass you need to buy to cover the lawn. So if we start with this number up here, the 675, that's going to tell us how many pounds, because that's how many feet per 1 pound. So when we do that division, we end up getting 2 and 19 hundredths. That means it's about 2 pounds that we need, a little bit more. This right here says grass seed comes in 3-pound bags, so we just need to get 1 bag. 1 bag, which equals 3 pounds. That would be our final answer. Now, if you had a little trouble on that one, make sure you watch it again as well. Here's your final question. Now, all you need to do is find the area of this circle, put it in your guided notes to show me that you watched the video and also to practice for yourself, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow. So have fun!